So my name is Artit Siamporn. I work for Siam Commercial Bank as the SVP of Business Platform. Siam Commercial Bank is the first bank in Thailand and the largest bank here in terms of total asset. Previously, when our customer would like to transfer the money to their family and friends abroad, it was very inconvenient. They have to visit our branch, they need to fill in lots of forms, they need to wait probably 3 to 5 days in order for their friends and family to receive the money. And they have no clarity at all whether they already received the money or not. With RippleNet, we can offer a real-time money transfer to those countries. We will have full clarity once the beneficiary already received the money. It will be a notification through their mobile app, which they will receive right away. And this creates lots of peace of mind and change the customer experience completely. Partnering with Ripple, we can expand our reach through remittance companies around the world. So now we're working with one of our partners to create something new in the market. Imagine if you are a tourist that you will come to Thailand and you can use your home country mobile application and scan for payment in Thailand. You don't have to exchange for local currency that you will bring to Thailand at all. You can use your mobile app, acting like you're living in your home country, scan for QR payment, and you receive the goods right away. This creates a new customer experience that never had before. And with the partnership with Ripple, we can do this and we can provide this service to our customers.
We're taking a payment flow that might be going from dollar to Mexican peso, and you're holding a dollar, you're selling that dollar and buying XRP, you're moving that XRP across the XRP ledger to, let's say, Bitso, who's here in the audience today. You're selling the XRP and you're buying Mexican peso. By enabling that liquidity to move from dollar to peso in real time, you're changing how that oil is greasing the engine of correspondent banking. So for us, in a world of hype, in a world of experimentation, in a world where people talk about the opportunity and really the speculation of digital assets, we feel like XRP is the only digital asset really poised to solve a problem at scale, a global payments problem.
ชื่อสริญญาค่ะสำเนียงงามลูกสาวไปทำงานที่ประเทศญี่ปุ่นค่ะตอนแรกเราก็ไปเรียนก่อนค่ะพอเรียนจบก็ทำงานอยู่ที่นั่นเลยเดือนหนึ่งทุกเดือนหนึ่งครั้งหนึ่งค่ะก็มาใช้จ่ายในครอบครัวแล้วก็เพื่อการศึกษาน้องด้วยค่ะแบบเก่านี่ต้องเดินทางไปที่แบงก์เองเลยค่ะทางแล้วก็ต้องมากรอกข้อมูลอะไรอีกค่ะก็เสียเวลาก็เขาส่งมาปุ๊บก็ได้รับปั๊บเลยค่ะถ้าส่งแบบ SBI นะคะถ้าแม่ได้รับก็รับทางไลน์ค่ะแล้วก็เขาจะบอกก่อนว่าเดี๋ยวแม่หนูจะโอนเงินให้นะอะไรเงี้ยก็พอไปเปิดปุ๊บก็โอนได้เลยไม่ต้องเดินทางไปที่แบงก์นะคะคือรวดเร็วค่ะแล้วก็สะดวก
The Internet of Value is about rewiring the global financial infrastructure to dramatically improve the cost, speed, and certainty of how transactions flow. It's amazing to me how many people really don't realize how much friction there is in payments. We've become habituated to just expecting this is how it works. And I think like so many other industries that have been disrupted by reducing friction, increasing speed, I think we're going to see a dramatic change over the next 10 or even 15 years that are really hard to predict today, that are the foundation that will be laid upon that Internet of Value. XRP is part of the heartbeat of Ripple. It is the foundation of how we think about liquidity management, and a core problem that how the financial infrastructure works is around how liquidity is managed. Today, financial institutions are wired with pools of capital. They're called Nostro and Vostro accounts. And these are accounts that are pre-funded between financial institutions. And that's capital sitting dormant and not being used for either working capital or lending or what have you. By using a digital asset, you can enable liquidity in real time. This is transformational to how global financial infrastructure is wired. Every marathon starts with a single step. For us, the first step is getting financial institutions engaged and working with us, getting them to understand how the core technology with xCurrent works, introducing how we can help manage liquidity. There's a lot of friction and cost associated with banks and financial institutions working with other institutions. We can change and accelerate how that works really materially, dramatically, and I think introducing XRP into those flows will take time, but as I said, every marathon starts with a single step. When I zoom out and look at where Ripple sits in the blockchain and crypto ecosystem, we are incredibly fortunate to be the only company with real customers solving real problems. That is at the early stages of that marathon, but there's no doubt that as we look at the race that has started, we're the only ones that have crossed that starting line.
We're talking to them about our product that uses XRP in the payment flows. They will ask me about the regulatory dynamics, and we have had customers say, look, until there is clarity in regulatory frameworks, then we're going to hold off. Now, that has not been the case because of the clarity and the certainty in countries, as I mentioned, like the US, like the UK or the UAE or Switzerland. You do have companies in those markets saying, absolutely, we're supportive, let's move forward. Here in the United States, we actually have about 95% of our customers are non-US customers, and only about 5% are here in the US. And people say, well, why, you're a US company, why is that? One of the dynamics is we have US companies who are waiting for clarity, and the clarity really emanates from the Securities and Exchange Commission. The US SEC said 2.5 years ago, almost 3 really, that Bitcoin was not a security. And then they came out about 2 months later and said that Ether is not a security. And then they stopped and instead focused their energy on some of the bad actors in the ICO market, the initial coin offering. So for us around XRP and the over 100 companies that are working with XRP, getting that clarity and that certainty, it's very clear to me that XRP is being used by many companies as a currency. You've had the US Department of Justice refer to XRP as a currency. You've had FinCEN refer to it as a currency, but you haven't yet had that clarity from the US SEC.
Good for the industry. What does it mean if you're in the US, you were looking at doing a token offering, an initial coin offering? What does it mean in terms of the new information you're going to have to give your investor base, and what that means for the investors eyeing them up?
Well, I think what it means is you need to have the same kind of thoughtful process that goes through any securities offering. And I think what was happening, and you had over $1 billion raised through these initial coin offerings in Q2. And I think what you're going to see happen now is that will slow because there'll be some discipline included in that process, disclosures, transparency, and really making sure the investors that are buying these tokens know what they're buying and know what they should expect going forward. I think that was really operating in a really gray area for a while, and the SEC has come out, and I think again is really provide clarity around that, which I think will be good for the industry at large, and separating really what may in fact have been even at the edge fraud to better use cases. Ultimately, I think digital assets have a very valuable role to play. XRP, which is Ripple's digital asset, I think the more utility you can derive from that, the more use case you can derive, the more valuable they will be. In some of these token offerings, that was really unclear.
Will it drive it offshore? Because, I mean, I'm looking at the Isle of Man near here in the United Kingdom. It's been known as Bitcoin Island. Could you just do offshore offerings?
Sure, and people have certainly talked about how you can just avoid U.S. regulation. At the end of the day, though, I think governments around the world are going to recognize, governments around the world have protections for investors, they have protections for companies in how securities are offered. And so I think there may be exceptions and opportunities to go offshore and focus on non-U.S. or non-British or non-European investors. But I think that's a short-sighted opportunity. Ultimately, we think that, and certainly Ripple has been very focused on, how do we work with regulators? How do we work with governments and banks to take advantage of an incredibly new, interesting asset class and in just a technology that can accelerate the engine of commerce globally?
We've talked a lot today about the dangers that cryptocurrencies pose to our economy. we've talked about the ripoffs, the instability, the extent to which they're used to help criminals with cyber attacks, like the attack on Colonial Pipeline and JBS. But there's another piece too, the adverse environmental impacts of the computing activity used to mint many of these digital currencies in the first place. Bitcoin consumes more energy than entire countries, and it is projected to consume as much energy as all the data centers in the whole world this year. One Bitcoin transaction, a single purchase, sale, or transfer, uses the same amount of electricity as the typical US household uses in more than a month. So, yeah. So, Dr.
Can you say that again?
Yep. A single Bitcoin transaction, that's one purchase or one sale or one transfer, uses the same amount of electricity as the typical US household uses in more than a month. I think the estimate is 53 days.
Wow.
Yeah. So, Dr. Narula, could you explain why cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin eat up so much energy?
Certainly, Senator Warren. What I think it's important to note here is that, at least from a computer science perspective, Bitcoin was doing something that we had never done before, which was building a system that was secure enough to support a massive currency and at the same time allow anyone to participate. The technique that the creator of Bitcoin used in order to do that, Satoshi Nakamoto, was what we refer to as mining or proof of work. And the idea is that the participants in the Bitcoin network protocol, because we don't necessarily know who they are and we want to make the protocol open for anyone to join, without being able to flood the system with copies of a person, for example, is that they prove who they are by contributing compute power. So the way that Bitcoin works is that in order to build the next block on the blockchain, the participants in the network compete to solve a puzzle. It's a very, very difficult puzzle to solve at the moment. And in fact, the puzzle difficulty changes depending upon how many participants there are in the network. What that has led to, as the price of Bitcoin has gone up, is more and more resources being brought to bear, more and more compute resources being brought to bear to solve this puzzle. And as a result, that has used quite a bit more energy. That is also how the blockchain is secured. The idea is that once these participants have expended this energy and expended this compute power, in order to rewrite the blockchain, in order to change history, one would have to expend an equivalent amount of power and energy. So it's a pretty fundamental part of the underlying security of Bitcoin.
So it's built right into it that there are computers all over the world right now spitting out random numbers around the clock in a competition to try to solve a useless puzzle and win the Bitcoin reward. And the amount of computational power and energy for this is a disaster for our planet. Now, some crypto advocates claim that these environmental costs are worth it because of the security the proof of work validation process provides for the system. And you were talking about this is the security that's built in. But let me ask you, Professor Menand, do you think the environmental costs inflicted by cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin are worth whatever potential benefits they provide?
No, absolutely not, especially for countries like the United States, where the benefits of crypto are largely illusory. They're not a better means of payment. They undermine the government's ability to maintain robust economic growth over time. They circumvent important safeguards that we've been talking about that prevent extortion. And the environmental costs are very, very large. And so I think the cost-benefit analysis on Bitcoin is clear.
All right. So let me ask you then, Professor Menand, what's the end game for Bitcoin? Will more and more miners keep doing more and more useless, complicated math problems that consume a larger and larger share of the world's energy for the next 100 years until the last coin is mined. What is the future of Bitcoin and the future of our planet?
I think a lot depends on how the people in this Zoom react. If governments like ours continue to sit on the sidelines while alternative currency systems develop, or even if they give succor to that development, we're going to see Bitcoin use continue to expand, because there's a growing group of people who would like to move sort of the whole financial system to decentralized ledgers. And that's going to mean more and more environmental damage. So Congress, I think, really needs to act here.
Yeah. So as we think about how to build a better banking system, we need to rethink the use of environmentally wasteful cryptocurrencies. If I can, let me just get through these quickly. Dr. Narula, let me ask you, from the research you and your colleagues at MIT have done, is it possible to design a central bank digital currency that does not require miners to perform random number generation puzzles?
Yes, it is.
And could you design it so it wouldn't consume more energy than a middle-sized country?
Yes, you can.
And could we have a central bank digital currency that doesn't exacerbate the climate crisis and undermine environmental justice?
I think you could build a central bank digital currency which does not consume vast amounts of energy, yes.
Good. I'm glad to hear this. Look, cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin are terrible for the environment. And that would be true regardless of whether we were getting anything productive out of that energy usage or not. The fact that we're not makes it even more scandalous. One of the easiest and least disruptive things we can do to address the climate crisis is crack down on environmentally wasteful cryptocurrencies, and now is the time to do it. So this was our first hearing on digital currencies, and we had a chance to talk with experts, bring in a lot of senators around it. But the bottom line was that what's happening right now in cryptocurrency, like Bitcoin and Dogecoin, it's a wild west out there. And it makes it not a good way to buy and sell things, and not a good investment, and an environmental disaster. So do we need some regulation around this? You bet we do.